Welcome to the Strategic Project Leader, where we help you leverage strategic project management so you can achieve your goals. Now, here's your host, Fola Aliberti.
Hello, good morning, and welcome to another great episode on the Strategic Project Leader. It's always a great time to come into your homes, to share, and to be part of your world. I always love saying this, that projects are the engines of progress. They help paint that invincible picture and create tangible outcomes for us in the world we are today. Today's going to be slightly different because, as you know, even the space and everything is different. But first of all, remember, I'm your host, Fola Aliberti. I've been called the Strategic Project Leader because I'm all about elevating professionals, business leaders, and entrepreneurs with the superpowers in strategic leadership and project management. It changed my world, and I want to help others create the life they've always craved for as well. On today's episode, it's different. As I said before, we're talking about how to build resilience through uncertainties. That's right, because when we think about life, right, things never go the way we planned. Was that different for you? Please let me know in the chats, right? If your life has been perfect, let me know. But seriously, projects don't go to plan, life doesn't go to plan. But I have got two great leaders who are passionate about change, who are advocates for this as well. I'm going to be bringing them up as we talk about this. But first, let me know where you're joining us from. I am live here in Calgary, and even different. I have not even been home for over a week because life has happened, and life happened to me. But it's about resilience and how we overcome that. But first off, before I get into any further detail, I want to talk about one of my wonderful guests that I have. She's been on the show before, and it was almost like an impromptu one as well. Listen, when we talk about a leader who has got diverse skills, is passionate about leadership, communication, she's all about creating that unique aptitude for leading complex conversations. The ones that help create productive outcomes. You know, when we think about conversations, we think about people. It's always hard when things are not going the way, you anticipate. So when we talk about someone who's at the, who's actually front and center of creating that, that's this particular leader. She has got, over 3 decades of experience in the profit and non-profit sector as well, and is committed to learning and professional practice. Please join me as I bring up Amber McMillan. Amber, how are you doing this wonderful morning?
I'm so well. Thank you so much for having me, Fola. It's great to be with you again like this. And it's great to be with you today. Also, I'm coming from Victoria, BC, Canada. And as you know, today is National Truth and Reconciliation Day. So my heart is thinking about what we are thinking about today. And I'm pleased to be here.
Fantastic. Thank you so much. And now I want to talk about a trailblazer. And the fact that I love the conversations that we're having today, but this leader stands at the center of advocacy when it comes to mental health. Dr. Vince is one who's an author, he's a keynote speaker, he's a business strategist as well, and he brings over 2 decades of leadership, corporate strategy, and organizational effectiveness experience. But I know what's always front and center, beyond all the credentials, is his heart for people. He has been advocating for mental health and supporting people who have gone through addiction and pain. And I'm so glad that I have got his time today. So join me as I bring on stage Dr. Vince. How are you today? Oh, God, Vince,
really
how are you
well.
doing today?
Really well, Fola. Great to have this conversation with both Amber and you today. Really looking forward to it.
Fantastic. This is great. So even before we go, as you know the deal, let us just start putting your questions in the chat or your thoughts as well around these conversations. We're going to be talking about how to build resilience. And another segue to that is, we're going to think about stress and burnout as well. Because when things do not go to plan, how do we manage that? So let us know in the comments. I can see I've got, oh goodness, you got, thanks for joining us. I've got someone from Central Africa as well already with us today. So thanks for being here. I know this was almost last minute because I almost canceled this actual episode because I have not been home, but I just felt that I had to be here and I had to share this space with each and every one of you. But let's start with you, Amber. When we think about resilience, first off, I want to take it from two focus areas here today. there is a path, I believe, organizationally, things should be happening to help support employees to manage stress and look at all these pieces. And then there is a piece around individuals, how professionals can also deal with that. So let's start from the organizational perspective. When we think about resilience, we know that it's about, I think about like an elastic band, right? When you stretch it, how far can you take it for it to snap? We don't want it to get that way. And how far do we not want to take it as well to ensure that our professionals are safe and we have that psychological safety and all that? So let's take it from the organizational perspective. When it comes to building resilience, what exactly should leaders be doing to ensure that we have safe spaces to create, productive work environments?
Wow, that is such a huge question. I have to share with you. I spoke yesterday to a group of people on unconscious bias and really increasing, personal self-awareness around their own bias, because so often, particularly when it's unconscious, of course, we don't know that it's leaking out. And I think organizations tend to spill out their bias, particularly C-suite and leadership. They spill out their bias on their employees. It's not necessarily intended. The challenge is they're answering the call. They're focused on the mission. They're focused on the bottom line. They're thinking of their shareholders. And all of that creates this potentially toxic emotional environment whereby which we're all human. They're all humans, but we forget. We forget when we're in that position or that high space, trying to make very, very major decisive calculations on how we're going to lead. And we forget that actually who we have to follow us are people. And so I think it's remembering that organizations often have a poor track record of. And I think our conservative or traditional business practice in the last 50 years really we've seen that. And today we are seeing people that are just burnt out and stressed and not staying in organizations that otherwise they may have if that leadership had understood how to create that safety. And I really do believe that it starts with recognizing we never cease to be human, and humans have needs. And one of the biggest needs we have as communicators is community. We need to feel safe, but we also, we have our own right to decide who deserves our trust. So we have to earn that trust. You can't force it. We think we can. We try to, but in reality, when things are tough, when complexity abounds in our projects, it's the relationships. It's the way people make us feel and whether we trust them or not, as to whether we are resilient with them in those moments. So I think even though we're talking organizationally, we're still at the individual level. We have to have the sense and the awareness that humans are humans and we got to trust each other. So much of the work of resilience in an organization, it actually happens long before we need that rubber band. You have to lay the groundwork at the beginning. That's why I'm such a believer in a team charter, because, when the team has this ability early on, when nothing has gotten too complicated yet, to agree on how we're going to navigate each other, when that time comes and we need to stretch that resiliency band, we can look to, well, what did we all agree and say we thought was a good idea then? And that community that we established in a project team charter can really help us in those times.
I really love that because you've hit on so many points. You've spoken about team and supporting each other. You've spoken about the fact that organizations need to think about the human side, because at the end of the day, we all are humans. Leaders are humans. Our employees, the project managers, the team members are humans. And the only way we can be productive, it's only when we are, mentally safe. We have a safe space. We things are going well even in our personal life, because that translates us back to work. And there's actually a major role organizations have to play. But I know that you brought the individual side. I want to come back. I want to come to Dr. Vince. From your experience, I know that we all struggle because things are never really perfect. Organizations have the role, but on that individual level, what can we start doing even today to help reduce stress and build more resilience? Yes.
That's actually a great question. The very first thing that I would recommend that would help people individually, themselves, as well as even in a corporate level, is really working on their level of presence.
Mm-hmm.
And Amber touched on this. What I mean by that is, as you're working on something, whether it's brushing your teeth, whether it's working on achieving a project milestone, whether it's building community, whatever task it is in your life, it's your ability to tap into that light that's within you and be able to observe your thoughts, feelings, and emotions and act accordingly. By doing that, what happens is that you can progress and move forward to what you need to do, but at the same token, be very respectful to yourself by being consciously aware of what needs to be done. And that typically is the very first thing, that self-awareness piece, that presence piece.
Mm-hmm.
Because from presence, that's where all the creativity and the productivity and the effectiveness comes from. So presence above all.
Yeah, presence, I think that's a really big one, because I know we've had this kind of conversations as well, just trying to focus on where you're at. But at times, often it gets hard because life gets tough, and things get challenging. What tools can we actually leverage? How can we stay? I use the word stay sane because I believe with mental health is a continuum, right? Everyone is just on a different level. When projects get challenging or things happen at home, what tools have you leveraged to help you kind of stay present and stay focused as well? And try and help you shut off the noise.
How about this? Let me just give you a little bit of background about myself before I answer that question. I've had the opportunity to work in a corporate environment for global organizations. I've been on boards of directors of nonprofits. I've worked in addiction and treatment facilities. I've helped people that are homeless and then some through volunteering. I've seen, I wouldn't say everything. I've seen a tremendous amount of people from a suffering standpoint, both from a corporate and a non-corporate perspective. Now, I'll give you one example. There was one gentleman, gung-ho, finished treatment, and for 3 years, basically was followed his program of doing extremely well. One day, something happened. He crashed and burned. And that's when the resilience comes in. Now, you ask for specific practical tools. The first one is that realize that you can't do it yourself all the time.
Mm.
You can't do it yourself all the time. I'm a recovering alcoholic. For 14 years, I didn't drink, but I was still a mess. I was a white knuckler, what they call. The whole point, you cannot do everything. We're all strong, but strength and will only take us to a certain extent. So I go back to that root of being present and being able to be self-aware of your thoughts, feelings, and emotions. And the fact of the matter is, when the shit hits the fan, excuse my language, and it will, and it did with me. When I almost died many, many, many times, I was surprised I'm still alive. You don't resist those thoughts, feelings, and emotions. You don't. That's the biggest mistake people do. You embrace them. You have conversations with them. This is what I do for a living. This is you. If I'm angry, I ask a simple question, as if anger is next to me and anger is like a little child. Would you be? I would say, why are you angry? As if there's another person there. If I'm in a violent mood, why am I violent? Why am I upset because this team member didn't do their task? So, but coming from a place of not only presence, but curiosity. Because what happens when you're curious, you take yourself away from the situation rather than being part of that situation. Does that make sense? So along with presence,
for sure.
Yeah. So that's at
I
a
love
very
that.
high level.
No, for sure, and I love that. And I want to really come up close and personal now. I want to, when we think about this, a lot of the times, leaders show up everything seems perfect. You see people on social media, like they just show, yes, this is how I built an empire, I bought my private jet and things or whatever. But I am about, not just showing the success, but also the messy places.
Mhm.
I remember being on the phone just yesterday with Dr. Vince. I'm like, goodness, these are the stuff that is actually happening in my own life at the moment. I'm like, things are tough. I'm like, goodness, even the podcast today, can I even show up and do it? And he was even saying, oh, it's okay. You're going to be fine. Let's jump and let's talk about this.
Mhm.
I see the community. I know he raised the point that it takes, you can do it on your own. It takes a village. And having that support system to help you when things are not going the way they should, then what do you actually fall back on? Now I want to get to Amber.
Mhm.
Let's give some examples. So I know that, for example, you've done this for so many years, and there are times where, you may have just felt that, goodness, this is it. I want to throw in the towel. An example, and what did you do? And how did you still come up, still being radiant and stuff? How have you been able to overcome those challenging situations?
I'm so glad that you asked that question, because I think there's one word, and Vince, I'm so aligned with what you've said, and presence is such a, it feels like we forget, the human experience should all focus around presence, and somehow it feels like we forget to be present. But I'll tell you, the word that just kept coming to me was vulnerability.
Yes.
Vulnerability. And for me, I can only speak to my own experience, I had to find a way in incredible uncertainty and imposter syndrome, and the belief that I really wasn't who I was projecting and or saying I was. I had to recognize that, yes, I needed help, and those helpers needed to see my vulnerability. And I realized I wasn't comfortable with my own vulnerability, and my emotional health really suffered because, I had enough theater in my childhood to know how to put on a good act. And I did that for a really long time. But that only takes us so far. And it was in my moment of needing to be vulnerable with my community, with the people around me. And, I'll give you an example. Just this past year, it's not even been a year, but my father passed away. And, this was a pillar in my life, someone who I spent most time and energy thinking of how to emulate as a leader, as a speaker. And I watched him not be capable of being the man that I knew for the last decade of his life. He was very, very ill. And when he passed, as sad a situation as that was, the exact time he passed, I was supposed to be teaching a class. And I remember, I laugh now, but I remember feeling a pull and then reaching out and telling this group, not that I couldn't make it. I just told them, I said, I'm in the hospital. My father's not likely to make the day. And what happened in that moment of my vulnerability was exactly what you're never sure is going to happen, and yet it always does. These people came through for me. They came through for me at that moment, and they absolutely cleared my decks. And for the next few days, my ability to share with people exactly what I was going through, not cry with them, not tell them details, just state honestly where I was and what was happening. It created this beautiful space. And those individuals, professionals, and also friends, they were able to give me emotional safety to do the grieving process, to begin the work. And I realized 10, 15 years ago, I might not have told that same group of people that was what I was dealing with. My preference might have been to tell them later, after, 2 weeks later, a month later, and just to let the chips fall where they may. But for some reason at this stage of my career, it is my ability in those moments now to realize that my transparency and my vulnerability is a tool to ensure that people respect and trust that I am human and that I can't do everything. It's a reminder to me that I can't too, because of course I want to be that person. I want to be, the feisty PM wants to show up to everything and be everything to everyone. but it isn't realistic. And the people who listen to the Feisty PM at some point don't believe I'm real if I don't share with them my vulnerability and my presence. And I think that's another thing that often in organizations, the C-suite and our leaders, they're not doing that. They're not doing it in a way that would actually ingratiate trust and respect with employees. And I think it's why many of us that work in these organizations are suspicious. You know, we have these sort of intuitive spidey senses that tell us you're not being fully honest with me. There's got to be other stuff going on. So for me, I have had to practice vulnerability, and I have dragged myself kicking and screaming to it because it was not what I wanted to do. I wanted everyone to see that I had it together, but it wasn't real. And so I tried to intend to show up and be real. And, you know, I'm probably a decade into this practice of really making vulnerability a habit, something that I wear as a professional. And I do believe it makes me more accessible in my leadership. And at the same time, I'm able to balance the complexity a little bit easier because I'm honest. I'm honest with myself, and I'm honest with others about how I really am doing. So that just kept, resonating as I was listening to Vince's words. And that can be very difficult because some of us have been trained and raised and reared to not show that weakness. And I really don't believe it's weakness. I believe it's humanity.
100%, I know. And it's a piece that I think is going to take a lot of work to get, leaders to kind of understand that, you cannot even detach your personal life from work. People kind of say you can only achieve success at work. I want both. I want it all. Yes.
Yes.
You can actually have it all.
Yes.
But until you show up the way you are, I think it takes two, because there are people who definitely want to show up. They want to be vulnerable. However, the spaces around them are not even conducive to.
Yes.
You are lucky, Amber, where you show up and say, I've got a team where I could just be myself without being judged, without, being penalized for it. Even, for instance, even in the workplace, when people make mistakes, people are scared to say, goodness, I think I did it. I messed up a little, because leadership, they haven't got that adaptive leadership to understand that you need to, look at things slightly different, because these are skill set. And that's where the organizational piece comes in. Because I know we talk about psychological safety. A lot of times it's just like, I feel it's just like a cliche. But in reality, how can we really ensure that we start holding our leaders accountable so that they are creating this kind of supportive spaces, a culture where people can really innovate, where people can actually come in and say, guess what? Today's in a great day, there's stuff going on, but I always put in 110%. And knowing that your boss has your back. So when we think about it from that angle, Vince, I know your principle, how can we really, is it upskill our leaders, get them to places where they can create those safe spaces, where there's empowerment, there's feedback, there's communication. What have you found? How can we get them there?
This is a wonderful question. I saw something, I can't remember if it was YouTube or someone spoke, I think it was on YouTube, where someone spoke about Navy SEALs. And this Navy SEAL was saying who they would want, who graduate the program to become the Navy SEALs. I don't know the actual name of the program. And who they want on their team. And it's not this big guy with all the tattoos. It's not the smartest guy in the room or smartest woman in the room. It's not, who it is? It's that person that will dig deep.
Yeah.
Is there in the trenches, that when push comes to shove, they're there for you. Our leaders are not there for us, is what I'm trying to say to you.
Yeah.
When push comes to shove, they're talking a good game, but it's all, especially in for-profit organizations, we know, and I understand they have stakeholders and whatnot. But the reality of the matter is they have to focus on the stakeholders. If you look at, and I've always found this interesting, if you look at the assets and liabilities in the balance sheet, employees are always in the liability section. I understand it's accounting. It's just, but I just wanted to point that out.
Yes.
But it's so. They have to lead by example. And my question to the audience that's listening, Do you believe that they're leading by examples? When you have
Mm.
politicians
Mm.
that are
Oh,
constantly going for that one vote,
Yeah.
please
mm.
understand, I'm painting a dark picture. But the fact of the matter is there are some wonderful leaders.
Mhm.
And
Yeah.
and typically, whether they're in large organizations, medium-sized organizations, and small organizations, the very first thing they have to do, in my opinion, is really get rid of the stigma associated with people that have mental health concerns, people that are having challenges. Once you do that, then psychological safety to get that trust, like that Navy SEAL, bring everyone into the picture, right? Where you build people's strengths so they can be beside you. But that leader has to be the one to remove that stigma. In this case, not just mental health, of just focusing on the big dollar. I know it exists,
Mm.
but you have to show that you really care, that you're able to go and help the people on the ground, so to speak. The
Mm.
psychological safety, and then the what I call the, and I love what you said, Amber, community.
Mm.
A corporation is like a community.
Yeah.
That's the way I view it. Most people think, oh no, it's a brick and mortar, or even if it's online, it's online. I don't need to interface. Let's face it, eventually you'll have to deal with someone, whether you're buying something or not, whether you're working on a project with them or not. The key thing though is community. And what are some of the strengths of communities? That's what leaders need to think about.
Yeah. And I think, as a part of community, I really think one thing we can also do is empower the employee, empower those of us who are not being well led to not follow.
Yes.
I think there's responsibility on both sides. And I'm not suggesting that if you are in a situation where you are being taken advantage of or victimized, definitely you need help and you need that safety. But for those of us who are in cultures where we know that the leaders simply aren't trying, or they're not making and taking the energy and the effort to really create that for us, I encourage, as an impact coach with my clients, I encourage many individuals to leave where they are. Not because it's
Mm.
easy to make that choice, not because it's easy to walk away from employment when you maybe don't have another thing lined up, but because you, my friend, and this is to the individual, you are
Yes.
worth more.
Yes.
And we get to choose who to follow. Every individual, we're all leaders in our own right. We're all followers in our own right. And we get to choose who to follow. And I really do believe that there are many organizations out there that we need to vote with our absence so that leaders will recognize they cannot, and their leadership style or their lack of leadership will not stand. And I think that I think we're well primed right now to make this shift, to start to communicate up, to share up. No, there are boundaries, and those boundaries will not and cannot be crossed, or you won't have the workforce to do the project work that you're looking for. And I really do believe that there's empowerment at every level, no matter where you are in your career, no matter what you're doing. When you have your own self-awareness and you are practicing your own presence, then lines can't be crossed. And we need to help and support each other in that community where we just agree we won't follow if you're not leading us somewhere that creates safety for all of us.
I like what you said there,
100%.
Amber, with regard to, the employees or the associates standing up. And the one group that comes to mind is the millennials, right? People say, oh, they're lazy, they're this and that and the other thing. But the beautiful thing about the millennials is that they did something that no other generation really did. They really stood up and made the CEOs and everyone think, hey, we can't work the same way. They don't work 9 to 5.
Yeah.
Now, I'm making general statements about being lazy and so forth. And the whole point is they're not. They work in a different way.
That's right.
And that's one way of pushing up, so to speak. And they didn't want to change. A simple thing where now that COVID's over, we have to get back to work.
No.
You know something? Oh,
Yeah.
for you, maybe, but not for me.
Mhm.
But it doesn't have to come down to that, right? Where you have to have something like a whole generation or a pandemic.
Mhm.
If they would just simply communicate and not just flap their mouth, but be
Mhm.
people of action.
Yeah.
Whether it's me, you, leaders in general is what I'm trying to say. I'm not
Mhm.
here to point fingers.
Mhm.
Just build that community that ultimately will enable you to engage with people more, make it more productive, more effective, and you get more money anyways. A triple bottom line and then some.
Yeah.
I mean, people want to do this. You're just resisting, for God's sakes.
Yeah.
I know. This stuff is just so practical. I know it's and at times you look at it, it's like it should almost be like, teaching a child ABC.
Yes.
However, it's not that practical, it's not real because a lot of people are going through hurts and pain.
Mhm.
People
Yes.
could obviously be more productive if we had
Mhm.
spaces where we could really, really thrive in our careers. And I think for me, I don't have all my sounds, but I just wanted to give a perfect segue to what's it called? I call Project Lifestyle. So there's no sound today, and I'll let you know. I'm going to talk about that pretty quickly. So right now, it's Project Lifestyle. And as I said before, it's totally different, just about being vulnerable. For over a week, I've had to be in hospital because a close family member of mine had to seek medical care, and I've had to be here and support through that journey. But again, I felt it's not just about that fancy piece, even the messy sides. I show that to you and I show up to bring value. And I thought about during this phase in my life, how can I, keep building more resilience? Because when I look back, at times I'm down, I'm like, why is this happening? What can I do different? And when I was thinking about this segment, I felt, what exactly can I really share? And how have I been able to cope and overcome? Haven't fully overcome it because I'm still going through it. Because a couple of things that comes right to mind for me. And I talk about for organizations, it's about creating safe spaces. Organizations definitely need to create spaces where there's a supportive culture, where leaders are more adaptable, we can provide feedback and there's clear communication. There's that employee empowerment. I think that's a very, very key piece. And organizations who stay focused on that, I believe productivity, I've seen that skyrocket. And I love the fact that Amber said something where she said, we need to get to a point where we need to be able to like be absent and say, now my own vote is when I move away, then maybe they can understand that there is pain there and what we can actually do different. And that's another piece. But from a personal perspective, I thought about a safe mind. A safe mind, what does that mean? When you think about challenges from life and work and how can you overcome that? First up is a lot of self-awareness. I've had to do a lot of self-reflection to understand what's my mental state, where am I at? What's the pain? And I called Vincent, I just tried that. I need to start talking to myself. Like, why am I anxious? What's going on? Things are gonna be fine. But again, back to that adaptability piece where you need to be able to be adaptive and say, okay, things are out of my control here. What can I control? How can I truly identify the areas that are within my control? Because that way, there's no point worrying about things that I cannot change because it makes things worse. And just as I told you before, I was on the phone even with Vince having a conversation, having that support system. So when you think about SAVE, I said self-awareness and reflection. A, there is adaptability, and then friends and a support system. Amber said that. She pulled in and she leaned in to people where she could say, I'm vulnerable. This is going on in my life. How can I support you? And how can you support me through this process? For the
Mhm.
past week, I've not been as active on social media as well. And some people send me messages, say, Paula, what's going on? But really, things have been happening in my life as well that I've had to sit back to say, just breathe, it's going to be okay.
Mhm.
Things are going to be fine. Having that support system, building real, true connections, not just about the things you see on social media, but people have definitely got your back. As Vince has said, like the Navy SEALs, where you're going to battle and people are going to have your back no matter what. Even enemies right there, it's not a case that, oh, just because of that promotion, I need to just say something negative about that person. When you start cultivating the right relationships and also cut off the ones that actually not serving us right. You
Mhm.
need to understand that this is not the right spaces. You need to nurture those positive relationships. The people who are there. I texted Amber just It was just last night when I said, I'm going to have this podcast. I'm like, Amber, babe, we need to come on the show. And she's like, yes, I'm right there anytime. Send me the link. Building that, being able to create that. I think someone talked about work-life balance. I love saying harmony. But having people who really have got their eyes focused on whatever the goal is, but they have those core values and they can truly be there to support you. Remember that. And also just having what I call like a diverse well-being. Have different pieces you can pull from, be it people, be it, for your mental health, if it's the fun stuff you want to do, self-care, whatever that is. Those pieces has helped me in the past couple of weeks through my challenging time. I have been able to say I had to be more self-aware. I had to be more adaptive. I had to get a support system, try and be more empowered. I am super excited to say that because my spouse is, I call him, he's my anchor. He's like right there. I can cry, I can lean, because every single time, he's always there to like help me. Who is that person? Who is that cheerleader? Have you got that person? Have you got a rock? You need that. Be it a mentor, be it a family member, whoever it is. But you need to make sure that you have someone, support to help you, a voice where it's safe for you to definitely cry. And I want to throw that open to you guys. What exactly are your thoughts as well? What tools as well have you leveraged, and how can we really create more resilience and build that as well for a healthy life overall?
So a friend of mine encouraged me to choose a word. This was a few years ago on New Year's Eve. And for some reason, I don't know, perhaps it was the champagne I was drinking. I don't know. But I decided to choose the word uncertainty. And the reason I joke about I don't know how I ever found that word was because very quickly I realized that probably was the worst word that I could have chosen for me. Because somewhere in my experience, my life experience, I realized I had so much needed certainty in order to make every decision in my life. In fact, it was only with certainty that I was even opinionated. And let's be clear, I was opinionated. So the certainty, I held everything with white knuckles. And for some reason, like I said, in this lowered state on New Year's Eve, I chose the term uncertainty. And I remember going to work the next kind of day or two after and I actually made a social media image. If you follow me on social media, you know this journey. And I chose uncertainty and I kind of wrote it in this, UNC. I just made it chaos looking. And I kind of put this on my wall, and for the entire year. And ironically, this was, I was just going to say, I think this was 2020 that I chose this word, or 2021. So it was a very heavily uncertain time for most of us. And I just looked at that word. And I looked at that word, and man, for about 6 months, I was mad at it because I realized I didn't like uncertainty. And I hadn't chosen the word because I wanted to like it. I picked it out of the sky, but I made it my focus. About halfway through that year, I began to realize that uncertainty was the most common thing in my life. I, for some reason, had tricked myself into believing certainty was where it was at. And yet after about 6 months of thinking of uncertainty, I realized, wait a minute, I have more uncertainty, and I always have, than I have ever had certainty. And I started to think about, how does that make me feel? I did those just little, like 1 minute a day. I would be like, Amber, how do you feel about uncertainty today? And I would be like, oh, okay. And then I would breathe and move on with my day. But over the course of many months, I began to realize that if uncertainty was more common in my life than certainty, that actually I already had resiliency. I already had it. I just didn't know it. It was the fear of the idea of uncertainty. It wasn't that I couldn't handle uncertainty. And I think, I'm a change management specialist. That's sort of one of the areas that I love to work in projects on, that people side of change. And I realized in my own experience that had been my game. My game had been that I thought that certainty was my power. And then I realized halfway through that year, it was actually the lack of certainty and my resilience within it. I don't think I built resilience that year the same way that I kind of realized I already had it. And I think for me, that was just my own experience of learning more about myself. I hadn't ever taken the time to ask that question. And now, 2 years later, I even have more uncertainty. And yet my fear of it and or my desire to lay hold of certainty, it just isn't there. I think it's just this awareness now that I actually have over all of these years, all over multiple careers. You know, I always tell people I started out as a pastry chef. So there's some perspective for you. You couldn't be any further away from that than I am now. But that I actually have handled things and built resiliency, and certainty is not the key. It is this ability to flex and move. And I think most of us as humans, we have more resiliency than we feel. And a lot of, for me, is just this, have we asked ourselves, have we looked back and reflected on where we've come from and what we've experienced and how we're still present in the moment? And the resiliency often is there. And then I think also telling people about it. You know, I never talked about resiliency. I never talked about uncertainty. I just told everyone my opinion. And now I'm like, whoa, no, I need to change the conversation. I need to share my journey. And of course, immediately as I do, other people are like, I feel the same way. And I'm like, what? Where were you? And I realized we were right there beside each other. We just weren't sharing that and you know, having those communal conversations. So for me, that was a huge shift in the last few years. Seismic shift was claiming uncertainty and realizing that, wow, actually, yeah, I could handle it. And it wasn't the scary work that I thought.
I know, Dr. Vince, before you comment quick, I just want to say something. You know, it's interesting that for us, especially as like project leaders, you realize that anytime a new project is actually kicked off, it's actually a change. Mm-hmm. It's a level of uncertainty you're bringing even to the business or whatever. It's a change. Mm-hmm. And being able to master that so people understand that this is kind of what's new. Mm-hmm. And the fact that I know there's this quote that people talk about a lot, that, you know, all the greatness or the pieces that you've always wanted lies on the other side, you know, of change. Mm-hmm. The only way you can build and be better and be stronger is when you go through something, you know, that stretches you. They realize, oh my goodness, this was just a piece of cake. When you layer on, change is what brings something new. Change is what creates the uncertainty will always come, but it's just having the tools to help weather the storm, from communication and all the pieces that we've spoken about, and having, I cannot talk about support system. But for me as well, I want to just see how we can also create, especially within organizations, where leaders start understanding the fact that your team needs you, right? Mm-hmm. They need you to be there. They need to be, you know, to understand, because when it comes to even performance issues and stuff, there's so many things that you could do collaboratively mm-hmm. to help change the situation when they just know that we all have got each other's back. When we talk about more around collaboration rather than just competition, because I think there's a competition there that makes you feel, I really cannot share this because I'm not sure what, you know, Amber is going to do, what Vince is going to do with this, or you're going to take it off. But if you understand that we are here to build community, to actually really support each other and build something stronger and bigger together, mm-hmm. I think that's going to create a shift. Over to you, Dr. Vince.
I know that I was on my leadership bandwagon. The leaders should be doing better, this and that, and the other thing. But at the same token, we have to look inside ourselves, and to what Amber said, we have to be accountable. And you have to ask yourself, are you accountable for your current situation? Are you accountable to taking the next step to move forward? Leaders can talk all they want. They can communicate all they want. They can have all the training that they want. But it's also, you're part of the equation as well, right? To really, especially from a mental health standpoint, because that's my specialty. I lost my do you mind repeating the question once again?
No, we're just talking about, just generally, you know, we talk about building resilience and stuff. I know we're talking about the organizational side, how we can support. I love the fact that you're bringing the person side, accountability. Yeah. What else can we do? How can we wrap this up and put a bow on it for people who are watching to say they're going to go away knowing that, you know, change is okay, uncertainty is fine. But these are the things that you can actually leverage to help you just overcome when the pain or challenges come.
The fact of the matter is, there are only certain things that we can really control in our lives, right? We can't control because we've been so programmed since we were kids. Thoughts, feelings, and emotions. We think we can control our thoughts, but they come up quicker than we can based on our emotions, right? One of the principles that I've done is really because of that awareness piece, because of that mindfulness piece, I basically reprogram my whole mind. But it takes a long time for a person, a project manager, to do that. But what I would recommend is that people take little steps towards that. And now I'm going to say a word that I'm sure that we all love: surrender. How many people are willing to surrender on this podcast? How many people are willing? Okay, how many project managers, because we're dealing with project managers, but people, okay, how about this? How many people in general are willing to let go?
That's hard.
It's hard if you perceive it's hard. I have this one word it's one of my life principles: unfolding. I let life unfold. I've been fired numerous times because of my drinking in the past, right? I have certain situations where people passed away. Many things have happened in my life, in my personal, but the thing is now I let things unfold. I went from an executive role to working frontline and getting projects on the side. I can complain and blame Fola, blame Amber, why this project is not going well. Why aren't Mary and Sanjeep not pulling their weight? What's going on here? My leader, he's not this or she's not this. I think it's important. Yes, leaders need to be accountable. What they say, they better do as well. Otherwise, there's a disconnect. But we as individuals have to really take that self-care component so that we're able to, whenever on projects, that we're able to execute the way we can, right? And what I highly recommend is in the addictions world, they call it a recovery-oriented system of care. And that is basically, if I'm an addict, which I'm a recovering addict, basically what would happen is I'd connect to build resilience. I connect to my faith. In my case, I'm Christian, right? Whether if you're Buddhist or whatever, a faith. If you have issues with family, connect with family, an organization that can help you with your family. If you have health issues, see a medical doctor. Mental issues, whether it's you want to take holistic elements or non-holistic elements. The reason, but ultimately, so you can take care of your health. Financial, maybe see a financial planner or a friend of yours that can help you out. The whole point is create that system, that community that amongst yourself. And if everyone did that to the best that they can, given the resources that are available, because I know it varies by country and by region and so forth, what happens is that they bring the best what they have to offer to their family, their organization, and the project that they're working on, and their community as well, without them even realizing it. But it's
No. That's definitely good. I just want to, Vince, I just want to say thank you. Amber, I want to say thank you, especially the fact that you guys triggered and pushed me to do this even today. Just helping me to just be me and just relax and just knowing that everything is going to be fine. And to everyone who's actually watching, just to understand that indeed life truly happens. As Vince said, we all need to be accountable. You need to, like I said, self-reflection, understand, almost like a mini SWOT analysis. What's going on? Right now, maybe your strengths, you can't even hold your strengths anymore. It's like, I thought I used to be like, great at this, but maybe through the pain, you can't even keep your head above water. Probably that's where the people coming after the support comes in. We can strive, but let's also try and create all the spaces to help each other weather through the challenging projects that come up at work and at life. Amber, how can people connect with you? Can you give us a final word and let us know how people can actually connect with you, man?
Yeah, so social media is always a great way to connect with me. I love LinkedIn, but I'm on all of the platforms. Also, you can find me if you just Google my name. I have a website. But connect with me because we can engage. Connect with me to build connection. Connect with me to build community. Don't connect with me just to follow me. I am only as good as those that I am in communication and in community with. I love feedback, and I love the journey. I always tell people, like, I don't know. I know what I know, but I don't know all of it yet. And I'm still curious. I'm curious for the future. I'm curious for my future. I'm curious for where all of us are headed. And in that curiosity comes a need for iron to sharpen iron. So let's connect, but let's do it so we can help each other, inspire each other, and be vulnerable with one another, so that, no one feels alone. We have all been there. Vince, I was, when you shared that you'd been fired, I realized for me, a lot of this work, this vulnerability and uncertainty work for me came because I had to be fired. I was so stubborn. I was so determined. I was so strong and opinionated and right. I had to lose everything. And it was in that maximized vulnerable space where I had to start to put the pieces back together. And although my journey was different than yours, I do look to that as a beautiful, and I'm so grateful to the universe for shutting me down, and for the circumstances being so epic that it stopped me in my tracks, and that it made me self-reflect, and it made me realize that I had much to learn. So I want to continue to do that curiosity journey with as many people as the universe brings. That would be my call to those listening, those today, and those that will see this in the future. Let's help each other, because we're in this together, all of us.
That's right. I love it. Talk to Vince, your final words, and how can people connect with you?
Just take the time to be present, and just see how you can let things unfold in your personal and professional life. You'd be surprised, but you need to surrender. You need to surrender, and in order to accept and embrace the change, so that you can best transform. As far as how you can get a hold of me, it's Dr. Vince Aliberti at gmail.com. It's DrVinceAliberti at gmail.com. But you can connect with me on LinkedIn. But similar to Amber, don't connect just for the sake of connecting. Mm-hmm. I'm all about community, serving others, and making a difference, and full knows that firsthand. And I look forward to connecting with all of you and making a difference in this world, one project at a time.
That's right. One project, one person, one organization at a time. I just want to say thank you. Oh, goodness, I can see Tayaba. Thank you for being here. It was so great to have each and every one of you. For everyone who actually left a comment, John, for being here as well. We had Jessica, we had Felix, we had Eugene, we had Kayangwa. Goodness, we had Engar as well. We had so many people. I know at times we don't get the text coming through on the StreamYard platform, but I want to say thank you to each and every one of you. To my guests, you guys are rock stars. Thanks for being here. But above everything, as I always say, we spend time to share. But what is one thing you're going to be taking away? What's one action you're going to be taking away to make this become more tangible? We've spoken about building trust, leadership, being vulnerable, being able to surrender. How are you going to become that example, the lights that the organization needs to help turn the corner and create the organization you've always wanted to work for, and pretty much creating the life you've always craved? A man always said that he wants to make a ding in the universe, but together we all can make a positive dent in the universe together as strategic project leaders. Once again, I want to say thank you to everyone who joined, who commented. But let's keep the conversation going. You can find more about me on FolaAdabi.com, as you know. Share, comment, and let me know one thing you're going to be taking away. Same time next week. I hope we're going to be here to share value as usual with you. But have yourself a fantastic one. Good one. Bye-bye.